Hi, everyone. I'm Gautham. So yeah, today I know the topic said it's breaking down walls and a bunch of other stuff, but I think it's nice because even the agency CEOs kind of touched a bit about it, which was TV, video, what's the difference, what's happening. So I think before we get into trying to find out what these walls are that we break down, let's just talk a bit about it as well. Because every time we start talking about TV, it leads into a video conversation, then it leads into an audience conversation, and then there are outcomes conversations, making everything way too complex. So my goal for today, in the next couple of minutes, is to try and see if I can simplify it and provide a more singular view to it. And I can make this work, yeah. Okay. So there's something that's been working extremely well for us when it comes to media planning, and that's our infrastructure and our planning approach. A lot of this has been built around incrementality, right? So a good way to do it is actually, let's kind of look at an example. But one good thing is that while incrementality has helped us get to where we are, there are certain limitations that it's provided us with as well. Some of it is in the data space. How are we tracking this data? What are we doing with it? How are we measuring it? Of course, there's stuff that we're doing on the side to address that. But let's look at a quick example. Going back to video, when someone asks us, we want to do a video plan, assuming that we know exactly what we're doing, we look at starting to build reach curves. Now, all of these reach curves are built on different data sets. Not all of them, but there are different data sets that are involved in it. What tends to happen is you start building one reach curve after the other. It's OK, even if you don't see the numbers, it's not really important. Like, actually, most of my deck has stuff that's not important. But so we're going to look at every time we say TV, we start, OK, a reach curve for TV. Then we say online video, another reach curve. Then we say CTV, another reach curve. Non-YouTube inventory, oh, Lord, we forgot that, another reach curve. So what we then tend to do is we take all of these reach curves and bung it in together, hoping we can make sense of it. We do it through multiple approaches. There are data-based approaches, and sometimes we just use stuff like random deduplication algorithms, Sainsbury for the ones who've heard it. What this does is it tells us that, hey, you know what? Now I've pulled everything together, and then there's a television reach curve. Television now allows you to reach 70% of your audience. Hey, online gives you another 10% on top. CTV gives you another 10% on top. So this has worked for us. The problem is actually in the final attribution of it. Most of the time, we're not necessarily just measuring this against what we're reaching or who we're reaching. It's about what we want to do for the business and the outcomes at the end of it. Is it really delivering that outcome? And it's not to say that this is a bad approach. It's to say that this is the limitation that we have. Now, these limitations get compounded even more. When we start putting in these processes that we've developed over decades and decades, I'm a firm believer that you need to learn TV planning before you can learn a lot of other things because it gives you that rigor. And I think that's the problem as well. It's brought us to a point where we're reapplying a lot of these processes. So let's think about it. Reach, extremely critical. One of the most important metrics for us. But what happens is we are planning for reach, but we're going after attention. We're planning for impressions, we're going after an in-target or an in-view conversion. So this, number one, is not correlating. Number two is we layer that again on top of our assumption where the consumer is actually sitting. So we assume that the consumer is in a particular stage of the journey, and therefore we are communicating to them on that. The problem is, let's take again CTV as an example over here. The value of CTV is that exists in an environment and a format that latches on to attention a lot more. It gives you a lot more engagement than a lot of other ad formats do. But if you plan your CTV on the back of reach and compare it with linear TV, you're potentially going to go nowhere. And all of these limitations, again, go back to the same thing. It's actually our limitations sit from how we start defining our consumers. We said metrics, we said methodologies, everything is to reach our customers, and we don't do a good enough job at it because we're putting them in boxes. not for any other reasons, but that's the only option we've had. So we put them in boxes of demographics, we put them in boxes of behaviors, we put them in boxes which a lot of digital partners give us, which is in-target segments, etc. Let's not put them in boxes, right? So what I'm trying to say is nothing new. It's not to say that audience first is something that we haven't been focusing on in industry. But the important thing is to think about it audience first, not to give them an exposure, but how can we create an impact or an experience that's unmissable for that audience. The way we do it is we move away in our planning process by thinking about motivators rather than metrics. Is reach the primary metric, or is the motivator for conversion and impact the final metric? We look at hyperlocalization, especially from an insight standpoint. Usually the problem with hyperlocalization is we go at it with the view of targeting rather than thinking about what works. Canada has got a huge breadth and depth of diversity that gets significantly underplayed when we do not take this hyperlocalized view into it. And of course, at the end of it, we want to plan and measure for the actions that matter to whatever extent we can connect it. And that's what we call unmissable. So for us to be unmissable, there are three broad pillars that we focus on. One is an unmissable data design. How are we able to use data in a different way? Let's be honest, none of this data that you're going to be seeing is completely new or you all didn't have access to, but we need to look at it with a different lens. Number two is storytelling. Very basic stuff again, but how are we going to take the data that is designing the audience to educate what kind of stories we tell? And finally, to create that unmissable unified experience that we all put in PowerPoints, and I don't know how many of us have done real campaigns. So let's look at the first one. Let's assume we take the same approach of trying to move away from media behavior-driven data for finding audiences to actually finding non-media attributes, right? For the example of this presentation, let's assume we want to go after high net worth individuals. We want to go after high net worth individuals and we want to tell them to travel, right? Fantastic. So we used some of our partner data over here, Environics, and we kind of layered some of our own first-party capability on it. And very quickly, we were able to identify, and we did this just for Ontario and Ottawa, we were able to identify about 70,000 households. The way we defined it was we found 70,000 households that had over 200,000 in household income, just one person in the household, so they're going to spend on themselves, they're going to spend on having fun. And more importantly, we tried to layer it with what is the propensity for them to travel. We were able to identify and get these people out, so I'll give you the numbers, they're not up there, but we looked at what their average spend on air travel over a period of duration was in comparison to the average spend in that region. In most cases, the average spend on air travel averaged at around, I think, 560 and odd Canadian dollars, and these households were spending upwards of 1,600. So there you go, a great opportunity for you to talk to these people because these people probably matter more than anything else. But the trick about making it unmissable is not just identifying the households, but seeing where they exactly sit. So when we layered this out on Ontario and Ottawa, you can see right there, okay, I hope you can see it, but you can see right there the clusters where these households are actually sitting together. What this offers us is an opportunity to talk to them that's a lot more valuable. The propensity for conversion in a situation like this is a lot more hard-hitting than just planning purely for reach. Number two, not going to spend too much time on this. It's about storytelling. Nothing new, right? Like we've all heard about dynamic creative optimization and all the other 407 jargons that go along with it. The problem, though, is how do we use the data that we just found out about these audiences to educate the DCO capability? A lot of times when we think about DCO, it primarily goes down to the basis of saying, hey, I'm going to use this data trigger and that data trigger. How is the data design side of it going to educate the commercial duration of your copy? How is it going to educate the look and feel? Probably the header, the copy, etc. So don't have anything else other than that, but storytelling then ladders up into a very big unmissable opportunity. And finally, you want to create the experience, right? So what this data and this approach allows us to do, we've found the audience, we've moved into a space wherein now we can take this audience and push it through. But we want to push it through multiple platforms at the same time with the same storytelling approach. So we look at programmatic, we look at addressable TV or connected TV, and we look at out of home. So now it's not about a video plan, it's an audience plan. And this is the last bit to it. How do we take it from being an audience activatable to an actual outcome activatable? And that's where your measurement piece comes into play. A lot of times, this is pretty straightforward. Everything that we do is meant to drive either demand generation or demand conversion. It's all educated by our business goals, and as you can see over there, it's done by saying, okay, now I've gotten this unmissable idea and I've created all the different media that I want to use and how much I'm going to spend. We need to power it with a lot of measurement, not just reporting dashboards, but actual models that are a lot quicker to get to rather than 6 months, 1 year later. Create feedback loops that are a lot more relevant and not only purely dependent on something I'm going to get at the end of the quarter. What this allows us to do is to take that measurement and make this truly an unmissable opportunity for our businesses. And finally, the whole idea about unmissable is not about making your media unmissable, but it's about making your business goals unmissable. That's me. Thank you.